Hi there, in today's video I'm going to be giving you a tour of my language bookshelf. The purpose of this video is to show you everything that I have, but if there's a certain book or if there's a language that you are interested in and you would like to see a more detailed review of the books that I have for that particular language, do let me know in the comments below and I will consider making a video on resources for that specific language. And with that being said, let's get started. Okay, let's start with Spanish, and the first textbook I have here is Nuevo Sueña. This textbook is completely monolingual, which I feel like if you're advanced, if you're studying for C1, should not be a problem. And for this textbook, I also have this exercise book, which is just a typical exercise book, I guess. Next is this vocabulary book, which is called Uso Interactivo del Vocabulario y sus combinaciones más frecuentes. So this is for levels B2 to C1, but I think they also have levels A to B1. I do like this book. It's basically broken down in different topics like economy or let's say sports and things like that. And with each chapter you have a list of new words and then you have a lot of exercises. This is another book for learning vocabulary that I have. This book is very similar to the previous one, but the main difference for me is that it goes into much more detail since you have this whole book which is pretty thick just for B2, whereas this one goes all the way from B2 to C2. So that series that I just showed you doesn't just have books on vocabulary. I also have this one on writing, this phonetics book, which to be honest, learning pronunciation is something that I really enjoy doing, but I haven't properly done it with a book. I do have several textbooks on pronunciation for different languages and you will see those a little later, but I haven't really studied with any of them to be able to tell you whether they work or not. So yeah, unfortunately nothing to report yet. And then I have these two grammar books from the same series, which this one is B2 and this one is both C1 and C2. Just the same as most of my Spanish textbooks, they do not really have explanations in English. Again, I feel like at this point you shouldn't really need them. And I think another thing that I really like about these is that they do have a lot of grammar drills for each particular grammar structure that they explain. Another grammar book that I have here, which is honestly one of my favorite Spanish books of all time, is this Gramática de Uso del Español. And basically the way this book is structured is you have theory on one page and then you have grammar drills on another page. Another great book that I have here is this Curso de Literatura. This one basically talks about literature written in Spanish, and not just in Spain, but anywhere Spanish is spoken. And I think this would be perfect for studying with a teacher or with a group, just because you could exchange your opinions on what you read. Otherwise, it's not like it's boring, but it's a little bit less exciting to just be doing it by yourself. So these graded readers look very magazine-like and they each talk about a certain topic. This one talks about food, this one about sports, and this one about fashion. So what you can expect here is a lot of interviews, a lot of articles, and a lot of activities that test your comprehension. Another grammar book that I missed is this Uso de la Gramática Española Avanzado. Wait a second, it's Uso Avanzado de la Gramática Española, I guess, because that kind of makes more sense. And the structure basically goes like this. You have some examples of how a certain grammar is used, then you have theory, and then you have lots of exercises. And then finally, I think this is the last Spanish book that I have, is this little book called How to Write in Spanish. I got it from a thrift store here in America, and I thought it would be super useful to me because even though I am an advanced Spanish learner, I still have a lot of trouble sometimes with things like writing your home address in Spanish, like what's the correct order of things. So I thought this would be very useful, but as you can see, I have not started it yet. So a recurrent theme that you will see in this bookshelf tour is that the majority of the books are completely untouched. Some of them I have started, but haven't finished. And that is mostly because I have recently moved to the United States and I just had to get rid of the books that I have finished. So for example, for languages like Korean or Spanish, you will not see any beginner books, and that's because I had to either sell or give those books away. Okay, now let's move on to my Italian books. The very first textbook I got for Italian was this little book called Italiano Fácil, and as you can tell, it is a textbook for Spanish speakers. I've never had a similar textbooks, but I think what they're trying to do here is very similar, with the only exception that this book does not come with audio at all. And that kind of sucks because the way they introduce new grammar and vocabulary in every chapter is by providing dialogues like the one you see here. I do appreciate this book because as it was written for Spanish speakers, it doesn't really explain certain things that are intuitively clear to people who speak Spanish. And then another thing that I do like about this book that I forgot to mention is that all of the explanations come in Spanish. And that is such a brain twister, you know, like a tongue twister, but a brain twister, because you literally constantly have to switch from reading Spanish to reading Italian. Another one that I have here is called Parliamo Italiano. I got it at a thrift store. And as far as I understand, there has to be an actual textbook because this is more like an exercise book. I got it for a little bit over $1, and though it does have some writing, luckily for me, that person wasn't very diligent, so they literally did like one chapter or so. Another book that I got at a thrift store is this Learn Italian the Fast and Fun Way, and this is not a book I would recommend to anyone, just because it's an older book, and I feel like a lot of American textbooks for languages, especially if they're older, focus heavily on learning languages for traveling. So this book literally tells you, oh, we're only gonna introduce you to the present tense because for traveling you don't really need anything else. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm not learning languages for traveling. So this big boy that I have here is this Complete Italian All-in-One, and this actually does not belong to me. It's a book that I got from my local library and that I will have to return sometime later this week, even though I am far from being done with this book. It literally has these 5 books in one, which are Complete Italian Grammar, Italian Verb Tenses, Italian Conversation, Italian Sentence Builder, and Italian Problem Solver. And I find it really funny that they call the Complete Grammar books Complete Grammar, but in reality, if you look at the table of contents, the Complete Italian Grammar book basically only introduces you to present tenses when it comes to verbs. And then to learn more about other tenses that Italian has, you would have to get the Verb Tenses book. Another library book that I have here that I haven't really started yet is this Better Reading Italian. There's short stories from what I understand, there's newspaper articles, there's just like all kinds of texts that you can read, different kinds of topics too. And then you have comprehension exercises. One thing that I do find weird is that they give you pretty hard texts to read, and then all of the questions they ask you are in English. And like, what's the point of that? Don't really know. Another book that I got from my local library is this book for kids called Io faccio quello che voglio. I'm sorry if my Italian sounds terrible. I haven't really been working on pronunciation that much, to be honest. This is just a story about this little boy named Rocco, who is adorable. I like him so much. He's very likable. I finished this book already and I really enjoyed it. Another children's book that I got from the library and that I'm actually currently reading is this book about how to use social media. It's not hard to read at all at the level where I am, which honestly I wouldn't be able to tell you what my level is because my comprehension skills are way ahead of my language production skills. But at the level where I am, I read it quite comfortably and I have to translate 3-4 words per page, which I happily do because I feel like the vocabulary here is really useful. I swear this is the last children's book that I have for Italian, and this book basically tells kids about different scripts and writing systems. This book actually belongs to me, it's mine. I found it at a thrift store and I feel like, I don't know, the stars just aligned that day because I found a book that was my level for the language that I am currently focusing on. And it's also about something that I really enjoy reading about, which is other languages and writing systems and things like that. The next book is the opposite of a children's book. It's one of those dirty Italian, Korean, Spanish, whatever books. And I also get it from my local library, but to be honest, I haven't been in the mood to pick it up. I have looked through it here and there, but I don't really know what you do with this book. Do you just go through it when you're bored? Because I can't really imagine... Oh yeah, the page that I opened is quite interesting. I can't really imagine just sitting and studying with this book, taking notes and such. So I don't really know what to do with it. Another thrift store purchase is this English-Italian dictionary, which I use a lot whenever I'm sitting down to translate my favorite Italian lyrics. This, by the way, is the cover of the dictionary, and what I really like and I find adorable is that here you can see they said fully revised and updated for the 21st century. Now on to my Polish textbooks. This is Polski Krok po Kroku, probably my favorite textbook of all time. I just love it so much, and whenever I make a video specifically about Polish, I will talk a lot about these textbooks and why I like them. I do have the main textbook, the exercise book, or whatever they're called, and I have the second part, as well as the activity book for the second textbook. The Polski Krok po Kroku textbooks also come with these, well, you can buy them separately, but it's this series called Czytaj Krok po Kroku. These are graded readers, and I love graded readers in general, but I think these are the best that I have seen. The stories are just so entertaining. I have finished the first one already, and I'm probably halfway through, well, yeah, 60% done with the second one. So I'm super excited to know that I still have books 3 and 4 waiting for me. This is a phonetics book for Polish. I have not started yet because the first chapter introduces a lot of theory, which I do want to read, but it comes in Polish. So I'm waiting for my Polish to be a little bit more advanced before I start this book. But I'm really excited to start this book because I think one of the things that actually attracted me to Polish was its pronunciation. So this one is another graded reader, but it actually covers A2 and B1 levels, so the stories are a little more complicated than in Czytaj Krok po Kroku. Same publisher as this previous book. This is Grammar 2, and it covers levels B1 and B2. I decided not to get Grammar 1 just because I have my Polski Krok po Kroku textbooks for lower levels, but since they don't really cover anything after B1, I decided to practice B1 with other books, and this is why I got those. And this one is for reading, and it has a lot of text. It's not just stories, it also has magazine articles, it has posters, ads, and things like that. And then this was supposed to be a book for those lazy days when I don't really feel like studying that much. It's just crosswords, but in reality it was actually pretty hard because I didn't know a lot of the vocabulary, and a lot of the times I had to look things up. So another Polish book, but this time it's a children's book, and I first read it when I was like 8, and I've been wanting to read it in Polish ever since, but I'm not there yet. Now on to my Korean books. Another thrift store find. It's called Ugly Koreans, Ugly Americans, and it basically talks about the differences, the cultural differences between the two countries. And a cool thing about it is that it comes both in Korean and in English. This one is a self-help kind of book. It's called 어제와 똑같은 내가 싫어서 심리학을 공부하기 시작했습니다. This is a book written by a Japanese professor, if I'm not mistaken. And every chapter basically deals with a concept from the field of psychology that, if you use it right, can improve the quality of your life. Another book that I have is this 2000 Essential Korean Words for the intermediate level. I like the content, but I don't like the format. The words that it uses are super useful, and I think the words that are used here are also the words that you can find on topic 2. I just don't really know how to study vocabulary with books like that. What it does is it literally lists vocabulary, then gives you a couple sentences as examples of how you can use them, and then it gives you one page to practice 20 or however many words you have just studied. I feel like this book would be really great as an Anki deck. These 3 graded readers that I have here are alright. I guess, to be completely honest with you, I'm not really a fan of folk tales for any language. I feel like there's definitely a lack of good graded readers that are not folk tales for Korean. They have the English version, they have the translation, and they also have comprehension exercises, but are they my favorite? Definitely not. Last year I made this very impulsive purchase on Jmarket where I got these 4 books. They're all aimed at younger teenagers, I guess. To be completely honest with you, I have started reading this one, but I haven't finished either of them, and I think that's just because my level in Korean is alright for reading those books, but reading them in a digital format where I can still look things up or translate whole sentences if I need it. But reading them like this and having to look up 5 to 10 words on a page is just way too exhausting. So that's probably the main reason why I haven't touched them since I bought them. Nothing very interesting here. I do like topic books and I actually do enjoy taking a topic. I've taken it like 4 or 5 times in my life. The highest I've gotten was 5. But yeah, nothing really super exciting. It's just like any other topic book. Another pronunciation book is this Korean book that I have, and I haven't started it, so cannot tell you if it worked or if it didn't, but if that's something you're interested in, it's an option, definitely. Okay, so 역사에게로 배우는 한국어 is a book that teaches you Korean through Korean history. Another interesting one that I have here is 전공 한국어, specifically the Inmun version. So this is Korean for humanities students, and I think they have another one that's either for business students or something similar, but since I was a social studies student, so I got this one. The super famous vietnamese 한국어, I have levels 5 and 6 here, and I think I even did some stuff. Yep, definitely. So not much to say about them. I am really used to this kind of format. I think they look quite similar to the IDE textbooks that we used to use in my language school. And then another super famous series is the Korean Grammar in Use. I don't have the beginner textbook right now, but I used to have it when I was just starting learning Korean. I do like these textbooks, and I think the fact that they don't just have the English version, but they also have this book in, I want to say, German, Spanish, they have the beginner book in Russian, definitely, and some other languages, just makes it even more accessible to Korean learners all over the world. Another thrift store purchase is this phrase book for French, German, Italian, and Spanish. To be honest, I'm not really the biggest fan of phrase books, but I really liked the design. It's also super old. If you look at the maps here, they still have Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, but it has all of the languages that I'm either studying or planning to study in the future, so I thought, why not? And we are now moving to the languages that I am not really studying yet, but I'm planning to at some point. So the first one is German. I have this Dirty German book. Nothing to say here. It's very similar to the Dirty Italian book. This is a book that I really like. It's a German-English visual dictionary, and I find it pretty handy. Look, you can't really tell me this is not useful stuff. And I actually have been thinking about buying one like this for my Italian and for Greek potentially, because they do have them for other languages. Despite the fact that I'm not learning German, you will see a lot of German books in this video, and that's because one time my partner and I went thrifting and we just happened to be at a store that had over 30 German books. So I left with 5 because it's usually a struggle to find anything language related, but that time I was just super lucky. So this one is 1001 Pitfalls in German. Another German grammar book that I got was this Essential German Grammar. I should probably have looked for something like that for Italian rather than buying it for German, but oh well. I also have this kids book. I also got it at the thrift store. Have no idea what it's about or anything. I had 2 semesters of German back at university. I don't even remember if it was 2 or 3. I hope it was 2 because I do not remember much. Another German textbook is this one, which actually has a very similar structure to a lot of monolingual textbooks that you can find in Europe, but this one is actually not monolingual. It has English explanations, but I do like how subtle they are and how you don't have to read through a wall of English text to actually find something written in German compared to, let's say, the complete grammar textbooks. So this is another Practice Makes Perfect book, and this one is specifically for German verb tenses. Got it at the same thrift store. It's completely untouched. Looking forward to studying with it. Another language that I haven't started yet is French. It's on my list, but after German. So I also found this one at a thrift store. It is completely like new. This is one of those monolingual textbooks that I happen to love so much. This one is actually pretty cool. It's a vocabulary builder and you have all those cartoon strips and then you have the vocabulary that was used. I have mentioned in one of my previous videos that I started learning Greek in August or September of 2022, and I put it on pause almost immediately after I started studying it, but I do want to go back to it, so maybe this will be one of those books that will help me with it. I also have an Arabic textbook, and not just an Arabic textbook, but also a textbook for intermediate Arabic. This is actually not mine. Well, I was given it by my partner who did have a couple of semesters of Arabic at university. So this was his, and I don't really think he used it that much. So whenever I am ready to start with Arabic, that's probably going to be my choice. A couple more random thrift store finds, and the reason why I say random is because I'm not really learning those languages or planning to start learning them in the nearest future, but this is a Teach Yourself textbook, which I am really curious about because I hear a lot of people praising them, but I don't have any for the languages that I am learning. I just found this one at a thrift store and I decided to get it. I am interested in Brazilian Portuguese actually, but I don't know, at some point one has to question themselves how many Romance languages is too many. And then I have this Easy Vietnamese book, which, to be completely honest with you, I'm not really planning to study Vietnamese, but I'm also a little delusional, and sometimes I think, oh, what if I have a friend who's like, oh, you know, I think it would be really cool to study Vietnamese, and I'll be like, oh, guess what? I have a present for you. Another very random one is this Learning Irish book. This was a result of me literally watching Banshees of Inisherin once. Honestly, all it took me was to watch that movie, and the movie is in English, by the way, so it's not even in Irish or anything, but I was like, oh yeah, why not buy this Learning Irish textbook again? Just because it was a couple of dollars, I decided it was a good idea to buy it. Will I ever start learning Irish? I don't really know. And then we have a couple of imposters here. This is Russian for beginners, for Spanish speakers specifically, and these are books that my partner used or uses occasionally to study Russian. Now on to my Japanese books. So this is another random thrift store find. My partner found this and he asked me if I wanted it, and at that time I was on my Japanese kick, so I was like, yes, anything that has Japanese on it I want. This is a book about, what do they call them? Power stones, like gemstones? I'm not really, minerals, crystals, I don't know. Very random. If you have studied Japanese, you probably have heard of the Minna no Nihongo textbooks. So this one is basically a graded reader, and it literally is just adventures of one of the main characters, or the main character for that matter, whose name is Mira-san. This is a book written by one of the Nihongo no Mori teachers here on YouTube. This is a book that introduces phrases useful in conversations, from what I understand, and corrects mistakes that are commonly made by foreigners, or things that more traditional textbooks maybe teach you that sound a little awkward when you talk to actual Japanese people. I also got a lot of these books. I'm not sure if that's all I have or there's some more. I got them as graded readers, but in reality they're just books for Japanese kids, and they have short stories or articles that explain how certain things work in terms of science. They also had, I think, folk tales or maybe legends. It kind of depends on the book. So these Genki books, I'm pretty sure that anyone who is learning or interested in learning Japanese knows about them. I do have the first textbook and the workbook for it, but I finished both of them, so I left them in Russia. Now, when it comes to JLPT, I have these 3 books. Initially, because I was attending a Japanese language course back in Moscow, our plan was to take the N5 test last summer. That did not happen, and then after that I started thinking that maybe instead of taking the N5 I should just study a little more or much more and take the N4 test instead. So I got this book, which is just basically for reading. Also, even if I don't end up taking the JLPT ever, I kind of like reading in any forms, so I feel like this book will be something I enjoy. This is a kanji book for N5, and to be completely honest with you, even though I did use it quite a bit, I'm not the biggest fan of books for learning kanji in general. I really like using Scritter for that. This book is basically just to refresh your knowledge of Japanese before taking the exam. But even though I didn't end up taking the test, I did have a lot of fun solving the exercise, just because I really like the exam format. Really enjoy both the topic and the JLPT. So this is stuff that I do for fun in my free time. Wow, that was a long one, but thank you so much for staying till the end and watching this video. As I've mentioned before, if there's anything, any particular language or book that interests you that you would want to know more about, through see a more detailed flip through, or maybe learn about the cons and pros of the book the way I see them, just leave me a comment down below, and maybe I will make a more detailed video on those particular books later. If you do for some reason happen to speak Russian, I have 2 videos on my Russian channel, one about Korean textbooks and another one about all of the Spanish textbooks that I have or have used. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye!